Welcome back, I'm Tedward, and today we're talking about depreciation and value, because today we're driving a 2022 Aston Martin DBX, once sold with an MSRP of about $219,000, 3 years and 12,000 miles later. This could be yours for under 120 grand. Now, I'm not saying that's chump change. That's a lot of money for most people. However, when we're talking about high value experiences for low dollars, that's pretty impressive. So right now, you could get into a DBX, your very own Aston Martin, for about half or 100 grand less than these originally cost new. And no, this isn't one of the 707 editions, so it makes 542 horsepower and a little over 500 pound-feet of torque from its bi-turbo 4-liter from Mercedes-AMG. Very familiar, but it's no slouch. It still does 0 to 60 in 3.9 seconds. It's primarily rear-wheel drive, but it'll add power to the front axle when slip is detected. It's got a limited slip rear, and it's kind of a monster. And maybe there are faster vehicles out there, but I just think that is completely besides the point, because this is ultra luxury, and now it can be had for less than a loaded Cayenne. The DBX was originally introduced to save Aston Martin, and spoiler alert, it did not. This did not go over quite as well as they thought, but now you get to reap the benefits in the depreciation. Now, some of the benefits of the DBX are actually the things that people complained about. The fact that it had a Mercedes entertainment system, a Mercedes AMG engine. Well, those are good things on the secondhand market, because wouldn't you rather be sourcing and servicing parts for a 4-liter AMG engine that is literally in every car they make? But the downside is that it's a hand-built Aston Martin, so sometimes you end up with some little squeaks and squiggles and things that you really wouldn't want from your $220,000 car, but maybe you tolerate from a heavily depreciated, basically new car that's still under warranty. The interior is gorgeous, and you get to find really wild builds. Now, obviously, they're not all going to be for you, but this interior option, among others, was like $9,900. You get carbon fiber inlays and trim pieces here. You get all this great deviated stitching. And in the back, you get plenty of legroom, because the wheelbase of this car is astonishingly long. And that made room for a non-stadium style seating arrangement, because most SUVs, you sit way high up, sometimes above the front passengers. In the DBX, you actually just sit nicely like it's a large sedan in the back. And for all 4 doors, you're greeted with the swan doors, which obviously actuated by this little piston. Those can fail. I mean, they do fail. They will fail. You're going to have to replace those over time. It does get annoying. I've definitely been slammed in the leg more times than I'd like to count by DB9s. Plenty of cargo space, and also the $400 optional Aston Martin umbrella. I think you have to do it. It's just part of the game. So make sure if you buy one of these, it comes with the umbrella, because I bet nobody didn't option that $400 umbrella, and if you don't get yours, it means that the previous owner kept it. So get your umbrella. And let's go to the passenger front side to get under the hood, because of course, British car things, that's going to be on that side. And under here, we're greeted with a very familiar sight. If I can find the latch, there we go. This giant hood, it's almost a clamshell if it opened up the other way, reveals our 4-liter twin turbo. They say twin turbo, which is kind of funny, because in the Mercedes world, this would be a bi-turbo. It's a hot V, so the turbos are mounted within there to basically shorten the intake and exhaust runners as much as possible, so that way the throttle response is super duper quick. We're very familiar with this setup. But anyway, let's get out and take it for a ride, because one of the nicest things about these DBXs is that they handle incredibly well. They're very nimble, and they're not even nimble for an SUV. They're just nimble for a car. In fact, if this doesn't sell, I might take it up to an autocross, because this would be hilariously capable on an autocross. But it won't be cheap, because gluing us to the road up front is a 285 section tire on this 22-inch wheel. In the rear, a 325 section tire, so it means business when it comes to grip. And bringing us down to earth when we need to stop are these massive orange 6-piston brakes. Oh yes. I do miss the authentic gauges with the anti-clockwise tachometer. That would have been really cool to have in an SUV. All right, but we have different modes, and it's funny, they have such a strange layout for these things. It's very Mercedes looking, but the mode button could have simply been an individual button that you toggle through, but instead they have an up and a down. So if we scroll down, we can get into sport mode and sport plus. That's when it starts to get a little more rowdy. Now, the biggest problem with this car is that this, oh boy, it's not a touchscreen. No, sir. You have to use these buttons. So if I do this, no, 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 no. And that's very frustrating because it's 2022 when this came out, and that should be a touchscreen. So you do have to use the scrolly wheel, which I believe is likely a detractor for a lot of people. But if you're saving over $100,000 on the car, maybe you get used to that. All right, let's listen to it in the back because I do think this is a really menacing rumble as an idler. It has an adaptive suspension, so I believe that buzzing you're hearing is probably just for the air suspension. To put it in gear next to our start-stop button is up here. You've got to have a little bit of reach to get that drive selector. And you're immediately greeted with great tight steering, but it's damped well, so it has a luxury feel. Now, the other side of this is it has column-mounted paddles. These are not plastic. They've got that little cold metallic vibe to it right now because I haven't been touching them. That's supercar stuff. Supercars have column-mounted paddles. That's just a thing, okay? Just the way it is. Let's get it off the line. I'm just gonna mat it. We're in Sport Plus mode. We're gonna hit it. These things sound so good. Now, this owner also owns the Durango Hellcat that I drove recently, and obviously that's a more alarming car to get off the line, but this still does the trick. And what I think this car does really well is it balances handling performance with power. So power isn't the story in the non-707 DBX. It's actually just a part of it. And I feel like it's more balanced than some of the other vehicles in this segment. Obviously, it would have been nice to have a V12 version of the car. Then we'd really have a contender against, say, the Puro Sangue, which is just ludicrous. But it is unfortunate that all these companies kind of have to make an SUV. But what I like about this is that this is its own thing. It feels really, really special. I mean, the Puro Sangue is its own platform too, but what we don't end up with is kind of the silliness of a Urus where, yeah, you know, I wouldn't buy a Urus. I would simply buy a Cayenne Turbo GT. What's funny, hey, that guy's kind of hoofing it, pretty entertaining. The other side is just that this thing really kind of encourages you to chuck it into a corner. This is something that I don't really get out of the Hellcat Durango or Durango Hellcat. I always interchange the way I say that. I don't know what's actually correct. But this has this vibe like, no, do it. Like brake later, turn in, get on throttle as hard as you can at that apex, like balance the car through a corner. It has this character of cornering performance that I think maybe got lost in the reviews because people just didn't seem to vibe with this thing. And I was always shocked at how capable it was. It's like a little track monster. It's got getaway car vibes because it gobbles up the junk in the road. You can't do this in supercars most of the time because you're like, oh, we need to tiptoe around the little bumps or imperfections. The DBX is like, I have this, do not worry, just send me. I'll take care of the rest. It's gonna make commuting to work entertaining as well as luxurious, because I could sit in traffic in this car all day long and be totally content, aside from not having a touchscreen. But to have an SUV that actually rewards an enjoyable on-ramp is so choice. Now, the only complaint I have when it comes to its tactility performance is that the brake pedal, while positive, does get a little soft. And it's weird because when you first take off in this car, it does feel like the brakes are a little touchy. And then we need to go out of Sport Plus mode. This is becoming unnecessary. But then, you do have a bit more pedal travel in a performance setting when you're really digging for it. And they're always there. I just think that there is a psychological aspect of that removes a touch of confidence in what the car can do. But it's just so special that you could get in this and just cane it through corners. Now, like I said, you're gonna pay for it in tires, but if you saved $100,000 off the MSRP, well, plenty of tire budget there. Now, if you're trying to do this on a budget, and you're just thinking wow, I could get a lot of bang for my buck with something like a DBX, making sure she's not gonna turn. The probable most expensive failure point on a car like this is likely going to be its suspension. It's an adaptive suspension. It can raise and lower and all that good stuff. That is usually where you think, okay, we got to make sure that we're good for the slush fund on the DBX, because it's the same way you might buy a Maybach 57 and think, this is great. And then you take it to a mechanic who gives you an estimate on what it really needs. And suddenly you're sub $30,000 Maybach costs you another $30,000. So, be smart about this. But the beauty is you can still have these in warranty. I don't know, you give me such a smile. Maybe you're smiling at the motorcycle. I just figure, why not wave? But make sure you've got a little bit of budget in there to cushion it. But make sure you can also find someone with an extended warranty like this one has, or a CPO. The high point for this is mostly that it sort of just drives like a really great sedan. It doesn't feel like a big giant SUV or anything. It has sedan vibes in the driving experience, which is a bummer that we're beyond that. We should still have something like the Rapide out. Obviously, that wasn't a super hot seller, but also a very lovely depreciated thing you could get after now. And that one does have a V12. But then again, now you got to worry about an Aston Martin engine. Bring on the brakes here. Sometimes they like to sit up here and wait for people like me. Get her back into sport mode. Sure, holding that gear in sport mode. What I like about this engine, it's very familiar. It powers the AMG GT among, probably a dozen other cars. Yes, there's always turbo lag. Anyone who tells you that something has eliminated turbo lag, if it has turbos, it has turbo lag. There's always going to be a delay. The perception of that delay is less or more depending on the setup, and this is probably on the low end of that. This really does have great throttle response, and it scoots. It gets you moving when you ask it to, and that's a phenomenal thing to have in a car like this. The other side of it is that it has a phenomenal sound. this is a great V8. It makes the right noises. It gives you the experience of a sports car. It doesn't neuter the experience because of the turbos. And that's actually a nice little sound. Listen to the paddles. So while this DBX may not be the absolute fastest in its segment, I think it's the most balanced, and I think having a super long wheelbase like this makes it really nice and stable for high-speed commuting. It's a great GT car. You can fit a ton of people in the back comfortably. Adults, like real people, real adults can fit in the back of this. The best thing is this snarling mad engine. That seems to want to go crazy all the time. And wouldn't you rather be driving this than a Highlander? I know we're not talking about the same cross-shopping price bracket, but this thing friggin' rules. Oh, it's so well insulated too. This is a good long-distance cruiser. So who knows what the floor of the DBX is? I don't know. Could this be worth $30,000 in a couple years? Very unlikely. I think there's always going to be some market for it, that it'll probably hold in that $60,000 to $80,000 range pretty much no matter what. But I don't know that. So I'm not giving you financial advice on the back end of this transaction. But what I can tell you is that right now you can buy a lightly used DBX that was once far out of reach for most people at $220,000. You're getting it at $100,000 or more off, and the depreciation of sort of luxury cars like this, whether it's an S-Class or a Bentley or an Aston Martin, that's good for us because maybe we scoff at the price when it's new. I just think that this is pretty neat value. We'll put it that way. And if you're looking for something that works, this maybe does the trick. So if nothing else, this is just a reminder that this is out there, and turns out they're a lot cheaper than they used to be. So thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.